Hello, beautiful. Now, if there's one thing I've learned from all of your comments and requests is that you love uncomplicated beauty routines and you want healthy and effective ways to take care of your hair and your skin. After sharing my simple 3-step skincare routine, many of you ask about my homemade oatmeal and honey facial bar. Well, you know I am not one for gatekeeping, so we're about to head into the kitchen and make some soap. Trust me, once you see how simple this is, you may never want to use store-bought soap again. Now let's head to the kitchen. Hello, beautiful. Welcome to the Beauty of Aging, a channel for every 50-plus-year-old woman who's unapologetically growing bolder. I'm Angel, the founder of Maison 276 and creator of the award-winning 3-step system for silver, gray, and blonde hair, a healthy way to brighten, cleanse, and rejuvenate the natural brilliance of your hair without the use of purple dyes. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make my homemade oatmeal honey facial bar. This soap isn't just easy to make. It's packed with natural ingredients that gently cleanse, condition, and moisturize your skin. It's perfect for mature skin or anyone looking for a natural alternative to healthy, radiant skin. So let's get ready to create something beautiful. Now let's get started with our ingredients and tools. First, we're going to start with our base, which is a clear glycerin soap. Now you can also use a goat's milk base, a shea butter base. For my facial bar, I prefer either a glycerin soap or a goat's milk base. Then we'll go to our oatmeal. You do not want to use instant oats or anything flavored. You want basic rolled oats for this recipe. And then what you're going to do is put that either in a food processor or a bullet to create an oat flour. So you're going to grind that up and create this oat flour. And that's actually what's going to go in your soap. Our next key ingredient is, of course, honey. And this does not need to be an exotic honey. It doesn't need to be an expensive honey. It can be something very basic that you get from your grocery store. The next key ingredient is your oil. And there are a variety of oils that will work for this. They're the same type of oils that I use in the No. 8 Botaniques dry oil, which is step 3 of my 3-step skincare system. The key thing to remember is that you want oils that don't clog your pores. So that would be argan, jojoba, sweet almond oil. Today, I'm using rice bran oil, which is one of my favorites. But in the description, I'll list all of the types of oils that are most suitable for a facial cleansing bar. Next, we're going to go to our tools, which is what you'll need to cook the soap. This is a 4-cup Pyrex cup, and I prefer the cup because you need a handle to be able to pour the soap. Also, you're going to need a metal whisk because a whisk that's coated, something like this, ultimately over time, if you continue to make soap, it's going to break down because the soap is so hot, it's going to begin to melt that plastic. And so you want a nice metal whisk. And then, of course, you're going to need something to cut our soap. Now, you can use a knife. Because I've been making soap for probably 10 years, these are the tools that I have to cut the soap, but you can certainly use a knife. And of course, the microwave, the primary tool. So let's get started with cutting our soap. This soap base I buy in bulk because I make a lot of this soap for my family. Just to see if you like making soap, you can start by purchasing just a 2-pound bar, and that's what this is. And so the recipe that I'm sharing with you now and what I'll put in the description is basically the measurements for 2 pounds of a melt and pour soap. It's called a melt and pour soap because it's a base that's already been cured, more or less. Making soap from scratch is a lot more complicated. And so for the beginner with soap making, you typically want to start with a melt and pour base. So this is a basic base. I'm going to cut it and I'm putting it on just on a dish towel. Let me put the camera down a little bit so you can see. Putting it on a dish towel. Now this particular one actually is pre-scored and a lot of them are. And that's really helpful if you don't have a tool like this. If you're using a knife, If it's pre-scored, that really helps keep it from slipping. And you don't have to cut each individual square. I'm going to cut them like this and put them in the Pyrex cup. Okay, I switched over to this side. I think the light is better. So I've cut up the soap in just pieces, but before I put the final pieces in, I'm going to add my oatmeal and then my honey. I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of the oat flour, and this doesn't have to be super fine. And then I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of honey. I have been doing this for so long, I can eyeball it, but I'm telling you, it's 2 tablespoons. It's basically 2 hard squeezes. And then I'm going to put the rest of my soap in and just squeeze those in there, get that in there. You want to make sure nothing's hanging over the edge like that, because then it'll just spill out. Okay, now we're ready to melt it. Now, everyone's microwave is different, and so I put mine on 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, one thing is important to know when you're working with a melt and pour soap, when it comes out of that microwave, it's going to be very, very hot. Okay, think of it like caramel. If you were making candy, you would be very, very careful with that caramel because it gets very hot and it's hot enough to burn. And so keep that in mind if you are making soap with a melt and pour base. So make sure you have steady hands. And when you pour your soap into the soap mold, the mold is sitting on something that is actually heat resistant. Okay, now let's finish melting our soap. Let's check our soap. So you can see the honey is at the bottom and there's the oatmeal. You may still have some chunks of soap that haven't melted, and that's okay. It's very hot. By the time you finish, it's all going to be melted. And while those other smaller pieces are melting, that I realized that I didn't talk about the soap molds. So these are molds that I've used for years. They're not very fancy. I'll link some down in the description of molds that are on Amazon that have different shapes, little fun shapes. Like this is a honey oatmeal, so you might want to use one that's like a honeycomb. But you know, it's just if you want to maybe gift it. And honestly, gifting handmade soap is such a cool gift to receive because you can customize it based on the person's favorite fragrances, or you can experiment with lots of different raw ingredients. You can add lavender bits. There's so many things that you can do with handmade soap. Options are limitless. And another ingredient that I forgot to mention, because I'm so used to doing this, it's kind of second nature, is vitamin E. I always add a little bit of extra vitamin E, even if I'm using an oil that has a very high vitamin E level, I will still put a little bit. As it relates to fragrance, the bars that I make for my face, I don't put any fragrance in those. But the bars that I make for just, you know, showering and that I gift to family, if it's going to be a soap that they bathe with, then I'll put some fragrances in those. And we'll talk about the point at which you do that. Okay, so just in that period of time, those little bitty pieces of soap that had not melted had already melted. And so now you can see what that looks like. Now I'm going to add the oil. Today I'm using Rice Bran, which is very high in vitamin B and E. Vitamin E is great for your skin, for your face, for your hair. It is just an awesome vitamin. Another oil that you could use is sesame. Jojoba seed is another one of my favorite oils because that has a very, very high vitamin E content, and it's also a natural antioxidant. So you just want to mix that up a little bit. Now, if I were going to add a fragrance, this is when I would do it. And if you're using an essential oil, you want to be very, very careful. Essential oils are very potent, which is why you always need to combine them with a carrier oil, because you would never, ever put an essential oil on your skin. Just 100% essential oil is going to irritate your skin. Some of the ones that I use most frequently, I love tea tree and lavender, and I often will mix those up when I'm making a bath bar. If you're going to use essential oils, start with 1/8 teaspoon and test that out. And again, that's based on 2 pounds of soap base. So start with 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon, just based on your fragrance preference in terms of how light or heavy you like your bath fragrances to be. So now we're actually ready to pour this into the mold. I spent more time talking about the process and the ingredients than the actual amount of time it takes to make this soap. And so this 2-pound soap base is going to make 7.5 bars of this, and this is maybe like a 2x3x1. So if you buy a soap mold that's smaller than this, just know it's going to take a lot more than 7 molds. So I've got to get another one. And remember, the soap is very hot, so you definitely want to make sure that you place the mold on something that is heat resistant. You want to continue to mix while you pour, because otherwise all of the oatmeal will be at the bottom and then only your last bar will have oatmeal in it. Here you go. Let's get our other, let's push this back here. Put this out of the... Here's a pro tip. This is isopropyl alcohol, just your basic drugstore alcohol, and you want to spray that. Totally not necessary, but if you're gifting it, it just looks better to not have the air bubbles, and the alcohol is going to evaporate, so it's not going to be a final part of the soap product. And then if you want to get fancy, just put a few oatmeal flakes on top, or if you're gifting it, it kind of gives an indication of what's in it. And remember, these are regular rolled oats. Don't use instant oatmeal for this. And there you go. Now these are going to take anywhere from 6 to 8 hours to dry. It just depends on the climate. But because glycerin is a humectant, which means it draws in moisture, which is why it's so great for your skin, it also is going to pull in moisture from the air. So after about 30 minutes, just enough time that it takes to form a skim on the top of these bars, you want to cover it with either a towel or a clean dishcloth, and that prevents, oops, that's still wet. And the reason you do that is because you're preventing the glycerin in the soap from pulling the moisture from the air. If you don't do that, when the soap dries, it's going to have little beads of water on it, which basically is the soap sweating, but it's actually not the soap sweating, it's the moisture that is pulled from the air. It won't hurt it, it's still perfectly good to use, but it will feel a little slippery because now you've got water on the soap, and so when you go to take it out of the mold, it's just going to be very slippery. So here's some soap that I made earlier this morning so that I could have a bar to show you the final product. And the way I remove it, well, it may just pop out. Let's see. It did. It just popped out. So if you're kind of messy and you have soap that spills over the edges, sometimes it won't just pop out. And if not, I have a little paring knife that I use just for helping me remove soap from the soap mold. And I just go around the edges just a little bit, and that will help the soap pop out as well. And there you go. It's beautiful. So now that you've unmolded the soap, you have a couple of options in terms of how you want to wrap it. Parchment paper is great for wrapping handmade soap. I actually forgot to buy some for the purposes of this vlog. I'm just going to wrap this in plastic wrap. But parchment paper and plastic wrap will serve the same purpose because you just want to make sure that you keep the soap dry and away from the moisture that's in the air. And this will last months, but it doesn't last that long because we use it daily. You can follow many of the fantastic soap makers on YouTube to get other ideas for how to wrap it if you decide you want to gift it, or other ideas for how to add additional natural elements. I mentioned lavender buds. That's a very popular one for homemade soap. Well, guys, that's it. I told you it was easy. I told you it was simple. And you know that it's healthy. You've got oatmeal, which is a natural exfoliant and a gentle cleanser. You've got honey, that's a natural moisturizer and also has antibacterial properties. And of course, you have oils. You want to be sure and use oils that are light and don't clog your pores. This is an amazing, healthy soap. I've been using it for the last 10 years, and my skin is healthier and in better condition now than it was when I was 50, and I'm 65 now. So give this recipe a try and let me know what you think. Most of the ingredients you can buy from your local grocery store. Healthy, clean, and it's great for every skin type, but especially for mature skin. So, oops, I've been carrying that soap for 10 minutes. And as you know, your comments and your requests drive the content. So keep those comments coming. Join me live at 10 o'clock Eastern for Coffee with Angel, a quick 20-minute chit chat on silver hair, fashion, beauty, lifestyle, and anything else we feel like chatting about. I'll see you Friday for Coffee with Angel and next time on the Beauty of Aging. Take care. Bye.